So there's a lot of news to get to, and let's begin at the White House, where the president is clashing again with top medical advisors over a coronavirus vaccine timeline. He is set to hold a campaign rally in Minnesota today after last night's outdoor event in Wisconsin. It's important to point that out. The president is pushing for a vaccine to be ready by Election Day, but medical experts like CDC Director Robert Redfield and Dr. Anthony Fauci are warning against that assertion.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk about political pressure, but the one thing we need to rely on, the FDA has made it very clear explicitly that they will not be influenced by political considerations. We at the NIH and the scientific community are very adamant about that. So if, in fact, it looks like that vaccine is safe and effective, I can tell the American public that I will take the vaccine when it's available to me, and I will recommend to my family that they take it.
For more on this, let's bring in Weijia Jiang. She's following the latest at the White House. Weijia, as you know, President Trump is facing backlash for saying a coronavirus will be ready by Election Day, along with contradicting the CDC Director Robert Redfield and other medical advisors. This was probably perhaps the most forceful I have seen Dr. Fauci because he specifically stated, he used those words, political pressure. How is the White House responding? And are you hearing that Dr. Redfield or Dr. Fauci is in danger of being sidelined?
So at this point, so close to the election, and the fact that we are deep in this pandemic, still trying to get our way out of it, sources have told us that, it's really unlikely that either of those doctors would be completely cut out of the mix. To some degree, their influence has already been quite diminished. For example, we haven't heard from them from the podium. We haven't had a briefing with them in several weeks, whereas the president has marched out his own personal medical advisor, Dr. Scott Atlas, during these more recent briefings. But, what Dr. Fauci says is really important because I think the public still deeply trusts him. We have polling to support that, and that's because he is the nation's top infectious disease expert. And what he and Dr. Redfield are saying to the American public aren't, it's not even about the efficacy about a vaccine. It's more about the logistical side, about, when the general public will have access to it based on the distribution plan. And President Trump wants to say that will be right away, that as soon as one is approved, the general public can have it. And that's just doesn't seem to be the case based on what the scientists are saying, what the people planning are saying, because logistically there are a lot of challenges ahead. Now, to be sure, they do have a plan in place to start giving the vaccine 24 hours after it is approved to those who need it most. We've been talking about this. Those are, elderly people, those people who have underlying medical conditions, who are considered vulnerable, healthcare workers. They'll be getting the first doses, but this latest episode is when everybody else will have access to it. And again, the president says it will be right away, whereas Fauci and Redfield are saying probably late 2021.
Still with the coronavirus, I want to talk about something that Vlad just brought up. Former Trump administration official Olivia Troy blasted the president's pandemic response. She did it essentially in a campaign ad. She served on the coronavirus task force, and she worked as an advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. And she says that she will vote for Biden in the election. She's one of a number of longtime Republicans who have put their support behind Biden. Can we talk a little bit about who she is, what she said, and why this is significant?
Yes, Olivia Troy was an advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. She also served on the coronavirus task force. And this is important because, as we like to say, she was in the room. She was in the room with President Trump as the administration was forming their response. She was right next to Vice President Mike Pence, as we saw in one of those pictures, guiding him as he made decisions with regard to the task force and what they were doing to keep Americans safe. And so, if this were a legal case, she was an eyewitness to everything that was happening and all the decisions that were being made. And she, heavily criticizes President Trump, saying that he doesn't actually care about anybody except himself, and that if he had warned Americans about the severity of the virus, he could have saved lives. We should note that CBS News also obtained her farewell letter to staffers on the task force, and it was largely complimentary. And she, commended them for doing everything they could to protect Americans. And the White House is using this against her. But, she wasn't criticizing her colleagues. She wasn't even criticizing the vice president. She was specifically criticizing President Trump. And as we've been talking about this morning, Mr. Trump's views and his actions are not always in line with the experts on the task force. We should also mention that the president says he has no idea who she is. The vice president, an official White House statement, and General Keith Kellogg, who was her direct supervisor, have all described her as disgruntled. It's a word we are very familiar with, because as soon as somebody leaves here, it seems the president and those around him automatically label the former official as disgruntled, which I suppose begs the question of why you have so many disgruntled employees to begin with.
And Weijia, to that point, why so many disgruntled employees? I mean, I went back and looked at other past presidential administrations. You can't even get anybody on the record, old-timers who worked in the Kennedy administration or Johnson administration, to say the kinds of things that we've heard about this president from people who leave the White House. The question, of course, is, why are they all saying the same thing? It's not as if they're talking about different aspects of the administration or of policy. They all say the same thing when it comes to the coronavirus. They all say the same thing when it comes to issues surrounding the military. What is the White House saying? Yes, every time somebody comes out and says, these are the things that I witnessed in the White House, they say it's a disgruntled employee, but the narrative is exactly the same. From Rex Tillerson to this woman, the narrative has been exactly the same.
Right, and they have detailed accounts about their concerns about national security and the safety of American people. And that's why they say they're speaking out, because they are so shaken by what they witnessed being in the room, being next to President Trump, that they felt compelled to share that with people. Of course, the White House and the president will say, well, you have to look at the timing. Here we are just, 40 some days from Election Day. And, these people are all politically motivated. Some of them are political appointees, though. They are Republicans, and they have now turned to support the Democratic Party. And so you can't just say that, they are doing this as a political motivation without addressing why. Why is it that they have changed their minds, and why is it that they are, speaking out publicly when they could just leave and, try to continue their lives?
Okay, Weijia, I want to ask you about something else. Not too long ago, we were talking about changes to the United States Postal Service. Many people have noticed a slowdown in their mail. Businesses have noticed as well. Well, now a judge is sort of agreeing with that. A judge has blocked what that judge called politically motivated changes to the U.S. Postal Service ahead of the election. What's been the response from the White House?
Well, President Trump has certainly continued his own personal crusade against what he calls a potential rigged election and widespread fraud because of the issue of mail-in ballots. And so he talks almost every day issuing warnings to people that, if they use mail-in voting, it is going to lead to inauthentic results for the November election. But we don't have an official response yet from the White House, but this is a significant victory for those Democratic states who really believe that they were, that their efforts were being attacked by these changes from the Postal Service made by the Postmaster General, who we know is a Trump loyalist and somebody who has donated massive amounts of money to the president and the campaign. There are some developments, though, that are important that have happened in the past several weeks. The postmaster agreed to halt some of those changes, like removing collection boxes, like reviewing overtime again and allowing it to happen when appropriate, because he said he does not want to give any appearance that there is interference in the efforts by the Postal Service ahead of the election. But this ruling comes because so many cases were filed before he came out to say that, before he committed to stopping the changes until after the election. And so, now this sets an important precedent in case there are changes that are questionable when people are thinking about voting by mail.
And Weijia, let me ask you about the Trump administration banning Americans from downloading the popular China-owned apps TikTok and WeChat starting on Sunday. What's behind the move? Is it enforceable?
So we knew this was coming, and today we expect a lot more details from the Commerce Department about the different mechanisms that they plan to use to halt the use. On Sunday, WeChat will be banned, and then on November 12th, TikTok will be, which gives the president some time, because that, of course, is after the election, and we know how many people use TikTok and that there could be a backlash if it were to be banned right away. But the administration has said many times that this move is to protect Americans from the Chinese government obtaining information, personal data about us, about users who have to input that information in order to use these apps. But the Chinese have said, look, there's no evidence. All of the information is kept in the U.S. on a server here, and they're not actually, maliciously trying to obtain our data. But the administration says, without providing exactly why, for national security reasons, that that's just not true. And so they say they're doing this for protection. And again, there's actually a briefing happening right now about it. So we hope to have a lot more details about what this really means for people who like these apps later in the day.
Like Vlad trying to keep up with all the dance moves that the kids are doing now. What are you going to do, Vlad?
I'm always in that vortex with you, Vlad. I just can't get enough of it.
Yes, the overbite move is very popular.
And then you start thinking, hey, I could do that. Why don't I try to do that? Then you do a little and you're like, I can't do that.
Nah, we can't. All right, Weijia, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Weijia leaving us with a little smile.